But there's so much more, isn't there? We can't afford our groceries right now. We're stuck in a war that we don't want to be in, and we don't even understand why we're in it. And so we need someone with experience to be able to bring us forward in this country, bring us through a new way forward. I have that experience, and I have that heart. I come from a family where my father was a Vietnam veteran. He came home from Vietnam and started the first homeless veteran shelter in the United States. That's how I grew up. And from there, I graduated the Harvard residency program as chief resident, went and built a telemedicine company before telemedicine was a reality. I went to DC, testified before Congress, and then formed a bipartisan coalition in which we got multiple bills through Congress to be able to make telemedicine a reality just before the pandemic and save millions of lives that otherwise would not be saved. I have the experience to be able to start on day one if you elect me to Congress. I'm here today to earn your trust. I'm here today to hopefully earn your vote on May 5th, and I would appreciate your vote greatly. Thank you so much to the organizers. Thank you to all of you who are here. This right now is what democracy looks like.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll let our time restart. Give you your full time. All right. Mr. Kelly, Kyle Rourke.
Good afternoon. Testing.
There you go.
There we go.
Restart this time for me, please. Can we stop whatever alarm is going off? To accent its speech.
Excuse us, folks. We got a little technical problem. Maybe just do a stopwatch and move forward.
I just don't want him to have to speak while that is going off. Okay. Did we find the magic place for all the cables? Okay, we'll go ahead and start the time. Kyle, thank you for your patience.
All right. Okay, microphone is working. Time working. Nice. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for being here this afternoon. It's a testament to the attendance here today that you all have shown up to listen to the issues. It is such a critical time in our state's history and our country's history, and I truly appreciate your attendance. It means a lot to me. My name is Kyle Rourke. I'm a former UAW worker, Navy officer, educator, dad, husband, and Christian, and I'm here running in the 9th Congressional District. I am deeply, deeply worried about our country's future, our kids' future, anywhere between war, gas prices, grocery prices. I'm deeply concerned that we're not effectively addressing those issues for our constituents here in the 9th Congressional District. As a former UAW worker, I was in Kokomo for 2 years. I spent 8 years in the UAW, 2 years in Kokomo, put myself through college, worked really hard, made some good money to put myself through. Not looking for a pity party, but I learned perspective to put myself in other folks' shoes. And now is the time to understand what our folks in the 9th Congressional District are truly going through. They're going through rough times, whether it's gas prices, grocery prices. Gas prices are just going up, $3.80. I mean, because of the Strait of Hormuz issue over in Iran. But as a former Navy officer, I learned quickly about not only about the military, how it operates, how it functions, how we get our money, how to assess soldiers to go to war, but I also learned leadership. This role demands two things: competence and leadership. As a production supervisor at Chrysler and as a former Navy officer, this job is all about relationship building. You've got to be able to get along with people so we can write and develop laws and regulations so our folks in the 9th Congressional District are helped. That simple. I want to put more money in people's pockets, period. It's that simple. We can do that with wages, healthcare cost reductions, ACA subsidies being reinstated, healthcare credits and such. But we've got to figure out a way to lessen the burden for our folks in the 9th Congressional District. They're hurting financially. Okay. I take this office very seriously. I'm deeply worried. So I appreciate you follow my background. I've been on the campaign here for about 3 months and a lot of support, and I truly appreciate your following, and look me up after the debate here tonight, and I appreciate your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kyle. Ready for the time reset, and Brad Meyer.
Let him go. Test it. All right. Mic working? Test.
There you go.
There we go. We're live. Hi. I'd like to thank the Democratic Party for putting this on, and I'd like to thank all of you for being here. I'm going to tell you something that you already know. The system is rigged for the wealthy, and the rest of us are struggling more and more every year. I'm Brad Meyer. I'm running for Congress to stand up for our values and our priorities. I had never planned on running for public office. I never planned on being here. I had a good life working as a civilian engineer for the Navy, and my wife and I were on a glide path to a nice retirement. When I was working for the Navy, I took an oath to the Constitution. And when Trump took office with his henchmen, it was clear that they never really took that oath seriously. They were focused on personal greed and lust for power, and they used manufactured anger to keep us separated and divided. And as I listened to them, it made me feel angry toward them. Has anybody else felt angry by any chance in the last year? Right? And the issue for me is that they keep tearing up the basic idea that we're all in this together. So I had to stand up against it. So I quit my job a year shy of early retirement to run for office. Now, this election is going to be about who can win, right? Electability. And there are going to be candidates that will tell you that in order to do that, we need to move right, and we need to be more moderate, and we need to sound, taste, and feel and smell more like the people that got us into this mess. I say that we're not going to win by trying to blend in with the people that got us into this mess. We have to stand up for the values that we believe in, and we need to attract people to those better ideas. We have to stop being so timid about what we know is right. We have to stop playing defense. The answer is not moving right. The answer is standing up and showing people that are struggling today that we have better answers and that we're willing to fight for them and this country. I'm Brad Meyer. I'm running so we all have a better shot at a better future. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. All right, we have a reset clock. Jim Graham.
Thank you. I'm Jim Graham. Like my colleagues up here, I'm very much a non-traditional candidate. I'd like to tell you a little about my background. I grew up on small farms in southern Indiana. I raised 4-H beef cattle. I helped the neighbors put up hay, and I did all those chores that farm kids do. I learned responsibility, and I learned the value of hard work, lessons that have served me well. I studied engineering at Rose-Hulman, and after that I worked for General Motors in Anderson, where I met and married the love of my life, Cheryl Graham, sitting in the back there. Shortly after we were married, she had to take on a major responsibility because I started graduate study at Purdue, and she became the family's chief breadwinner for a few years. While I was there, also our son was born, and that was a great time for us. After I finished my degree, I started teaching engineering, first at Purdue for a year, then at Rensselaer Polytechnic in upstate New York, and then 20 years at the Speed School at the University of Louisville. Along the way, I helped found a tech startup, and I served as the CEO of that startup for 7 years. When I first considered running for this office in the summer of 2023, one of the very first things I did was to visit the late Lee Hamilton in his office at Indiana University. Lee's advice, get out, travel the district, and learn about the people in the district. And that's exactly what I did for 2.5 years. What I found is an overall apprehension, much like Brad mentioned, about the family progressive financial affairs. People in the district are working long hours, many multiple jobs, and barely making ends meet. Service jobs don't pay well, industry jobs are hard to get, and the price of everything keeps going up. The career politicians, such as Erin Houchin, have let this country down in a big way. Erin's so out of touch, she doesn't even seem to realize that there's a war going on that Congress was supposed to authorize, or that people are going to lose their health care because of her votes last year, or that a lot of people in the district simply can't hardly put food on the table. She knows all these things, but she chooses to ignore them in obedience to her MAGA masters, and I think that's sad. I'm looking forward to answering some questions this afternoon and tell you where I stand and what I think we need to do to win this race. It's obvious to me that we have to attract Democrats, independents, and a slice of Republicans if we're going to be successful. If we're not, we won't be successful. And I don't know about you, but that's not a good prospect that I like.
Thank you, Jim. At this time, we will begin the questions. We will start in the same order of the introduction, and then for each question, we will progress with the first candidate answering down the line so that everyone has had a chance to answer a question first. Starting off with a question about general candidacy. This one, Tim, you'll be up first. Again, you have 90 seconds. We're watching the clock. The question is, what makes you uniquely qualified to represent the 9th District in Congress?
As an emergency physician, practicing As an emergency physician practicing here in southern Indiana, right in Clark County, I'm currently working at the standalone emergency department over by Kroger on 62 East 10th Street. When I see patients come through the door, I don't ask them where they're from. I don't ask them if they can pay. I don't ask their political leanings. I only ask if I can help. And these patients come at their most vulnerable moments. And in fact, they're our neighbors. And I've seen some of you here in that emergency department at your most vulnerable moments. And we've formed relationships. And I've learned how to do that. And since that time, I've been working at this for over 3 years. The last election, I was your Democratic candidate for Congress. And like many, I lost in that election to Donald Trump and others. And since that time, what did I do? I went back to work. I've been here. I have recruited almost 1,000 volunteers for this campaign at this point. We've put out thousands of postcards, thousands of phone calls, spoke to tens of thousands of voters and knocked on their doors. I'm here, I'm not going away, and I'll continue to work as hard as I possibly can to represent all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Kyle, same question. What makes you uniquely qualified to represent the 9th District in Congress?
Yes. Yeah. So I talked earlier about leadership. So my combined Navy leadership, manufacturing leadership, Chrysler, Cummins, Ford, and now Rolls-Royce, those experiences in terms of leadership is about working with people with different demographics to get things done. At the end of the day, that's what it's about. You're trying to work in different groups to design, develop legislation to help your constituents in your community. So what makes my background unique and different? Well, one is perspective, okay? I understand what it's like to be a blue-collar worker because I was one for 8.5 years. I understand what it's like to be in the military because I was in the military. I understand what it's like actually what's happening now with our government and on war footing with Iran. You know, for example, the Strait of Hormuz issue, we're having that with the bottleneck that's happening right now, which is driving gas prices up. Trump knew about that. Basically, I guarantee the admirals advised him that was a risk, that was a concern. And so essentially he said, no, we can deal with it. But actually that chicken has come home to roost, right? We're seeing that now in gas prices. So I'm uniquely qualified because I have a unique experience from the military perspective to understand what's happening, but also I understand legally what we can do, what I can do as a legislator to write legislation to make happen. Thank you.
Brad, same question. What makes you uniquely qualified to represent the 9th District in Congress?
I'm a 7th generation Hoosier, and some of you have talked about leadership, and leadership is important. I spent 25 years in manufacturing leadership positions here in Indiana. My largest group was about 100 employees spread over 5 states. And that's going to be important when I'm your congressman, because you're going to need support from a team. It's not just going to be me, and you're going to have local people here, and there's management involved in that. But it's more than just about management and administration. It's about perspective. My perspective is much more progressive, I think, than the other candidates. Okay? I believe that there really is a lot that we need to do, and we have serious problems, and we really need to start working on them instead of just wallpapering over them. And then the last thing is that I'm more activist than a normal candidate. One of the first things I did was I called for a protest at Camp Atterbury. One of the very first things I did, because I didn't like what was happening with the possibility of using that for ICE detention. And the last thing is, I have spent a lot of time listening. I've had at least 14 town halls and group meetings with people to understand what they need. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Jim Graham, same question. What makes you uniquely qualified to represent the 9th District in Congress?
I've lived over half my life in this district. I grew up in Monroe County, and my wife and I have lived in Clark County for 23 years now, since 2003. As I mentioned earlier, I've traveled extensively in the district, talking to people, finding out about their issues and their concerns. Secondly, in my life, I've done many different jobs and worn many different hats. Most of my positions have involved leadership and problem solving, skills that are much needed in our Congress today. My platform will involve taking care of people, building economic opportunities, and common sense problem solving. I think that's a platform that will appeal across the district to Democrats, independents, and some Republicans. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. This question goes first to Kyle. What is one specific policy you would support in your first term to lower costs for families, and how would it be funded?
So to lower costs for families. So we all know about the ACA, Affordable Care Act subsidies that expired. So first step is I think that's the quickest and easiest thing to do once I enter office, is to reenact or reinstitute those subsidies. We have seen about 26% increase in premiums across the board for those folks who have ACA, okay? So I think that's something we can quickly do once the Democrats take control of Congress. I think that's very easy to do. Another thing, we need to look at healthcare tax credits in terms of looking at the healthcare financial, liabilities for families and what they pay every month. For example, if you spend over $5,000 a year and you make a certain income, we could potentially look at a cap on those healthcare expenses, and maybe you could look at writing off anything over and above $5,000 a year. And then two, I would definitely advocate for a minimum wage increase. That's been, outdated for let's see, 2009 was the last time minimum wage was increased. It's currently at $7.25. That's utterly ridiculous, okay? So there should be good bipartisan support to get that raised. It probably needs to be
Thank
around.
you, Kyle.
Okay, thank you.
Let's remember, I know you guys want to applaud for all of the candidates, but it's going to add a little bit of extra time if we have to wait between the applause. So feel free to just wave at them if you like what they're saying. Thank you. All right, Brad, same question. What is one specific policy you would support in your first term to lower costs for families, and how would it be funded?
So, pardon me, number one, I'm advocating for a $20 an hour minimum wage, because nobody should have to wonder whether they can keep a roof over their head and food on the table. We also need to increase the standard tax deduction to $20,000 so that people can keep more money in their pockets. These are practical policies. And we also need to, as Kyle said, it's nice to go first sometimes, because the ACA subsidies need to be addressed. There's a lot of people that are hurting. So the question is, how do we pay for this? We're going to have to increase taxes on the rich. And I'm not starting, there's a split in the Democratic Party, and I'm not saying that we need to tax the rich as a punitive thing. I'm saying we need to look at what kind of society we want and how we need to be, and then we need to figure out how we can responsibly fund that. And the result is taxing at the higher levels, not as a punishment, but because that's what a fair society looks like. And that's the basis that I'm going to be viewing things and approaching things. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. I know you want to clap. Sit on your hands. All right, Jim, same question. What is one specific policy you would support in your first term to lower costs for families, and how would it be funded?
Well, one thing fairly obvious, and that is ending the Iran war would in short order bring down the price of gasoline. I think that's so obvious I won't spend any time dwelling on that. Beyond that, one of the biggest costs for families is food. And part of the reason for that is the monopolies that exist in the food industry and distribution and sales of food. 4 companies control 85% of the beef processing in this country. Another 4 companies control 70% of the pork processing. And 53% of the grocery stores where we can buy our groceries are controlled by only 5 companies. And a bunch of them want to merge and become even bigger. When you have monopolies like that, it's inevitable that there's not going to be competition, prices are going to be high for the consumer. As a young congressman, I would call for antitrust hearings in this area. I'm not naive enough to believe that people are going to jump up and do that. But I think there may well be some support with that, given the rising costs and by a number of young new congressmen coming into Congress. So that's my plan. That's where we'd stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Tim Peck, one specific policy you would support in your first term to lower costs for families, and how would it be funded?
People are struggling right now, and there are a lot of people in debt. And so I think the first 100 days we can attack people's debt and help them with it. We can do this with healthcare. We know that people on Medicare, even people on Medicare, 20% of them have medical debt. And so we need to make immediate action to decrease the cost of healthcare. We can do that by making prior authorization, the thing that stands in the way of you and me actually giving you what you need, illegal. We can do that by making middlemen like pharmacy benefit managers illegal. We can do that by making billion-dollar ad campaigns from pharmaceutical companies illegal. And we can make sure that the money that you use with your taxpayer dollars that goes to the government can go to patient care, not to executive bonuses and shareholder payouts. And then credit card debt. Let's put a cap on credit card debt. It's usury. Let's put a cap on student debt that's been given to the American people. And let's look at families and what they really need, including groceries, getting those down and making sure that credit card debt again is capped, but also making sure that childcare is affordable. And one way where there is bipartisan support is to bring pre-K back to every American. Let's get our debt under control. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question starts with Brad. How should the federal government support local infrastructure repair and development? And should this include the use of community project funding, also known as earmarks, to address specific community needs?
So earmarks have a bad rap. And I understand, and I understand why, but the fact is that's the current system. And under the current system, Indiana gets about $1.1 per tax dollar that we put in. Kentucky gets, I think, 1.7. We're not using the existing system the way we need to. So under the existing system, if it is earmarks, and that is how the system gets money to projects, to fund, to make things better in Indiana, then that's what we need to do. We also need to make sure that it is done in a transparent way, and it is not done behind closed doors, kind of the way maybe it is now. So we need to work through the existing system, and I think we need to change the system so that Kentucky doesn't get 1.7 and we only get 1.1, although we have very similar circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Jim Graham, same question. What should the federal government do to support local infrastructure repair and development? Should this include community project funding / earmarks to address specific needs?
Yes, one of the most important things that the congressional representative should be doing is trying to find ways, creative ways, to help their local communities. The Community Funding Project is one of the new ways that is a good source of funding. They're like earmarks, as was said, but there's some restrictions on that. I'd like to give Aaron Halchins credit for once for finding some CFP money for blight restoration in Charlestown. As congressman, I would use that mechanism. I would find all the repair projects that need to be done. I would ask people, local community, to submit that to me. I would choose ones to go into CP request, The mechanism is they actually have to go through committee approval, but once that's approved, the money goes to the communities, and that's what we want.
Tim, same question. Do you need me to repeat it?
No, thank you. Community project funding is what we're talking about. And there is someone on the stage that's a lot of that for their community. So thank you, Mayor Treva. It is proof in point of how important it is to have that. What's also proof in point is that Mayor Treva and others have worked across the aisle to make that happen. Community funding projects, if we get into Congress right now, we're going to have to work with a lot of Republican mayors and city councils. And so we have to have the courage to be able to work with those people and get what people need. The other thing that we can do to get what people need is not only bring that money into the corporations and businesses that serve us, but the workers who work for those corporations. We need to attach standards to this money so that workers get paid a fair wage, that workers have the environmental protections that they need, the worksite protections that they need, that they won't be fired without cause. We also need accountability for this money. There needs to be very clear oversight and rules of where it goes, how it's spent, and then tracking it afterwards to make it sure it's spent correctly. These projects can be the lifeblood of our community, and that starts with making sure the people who are doing the work are honored as much as the businesses that support us. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Kyle, do you need to repeat the question?
Yeah, I'm good. So yeah, community project funding, I think it really starts in the community level. Like, for example, here in New Albany, the mayor here will identify opportunities to revitalize the town, to make it more attractive for businesses potentially. Jeffersonville the same way, right? Madison the same way. It all starts at the local level. They have to identify what are some areas for revitalization such that they can attract new business, right? We want to attract new business because if we have new businesses, we have new career opportunities, and we can pay people a good living wage. It all comes down to that at the end of the day. Fiber optic cable lines, for example. If we're lacking fiber optic cable in a certain part of the district, we want to look at the community project funding as an earmark mechanism to get them that funding so they can open up that area so businesses can come in and start to hire folks and develop a business. I see that is critical going forward for the future, especially with all these data centers. Now, obviously, with data centers, we got a lot of problems, right? There's no value proposition, there's no transparency. They think they can just come in and build a data center and build it and walk away. That's not appropriate. There needs to be a clear value proposition. When I say value proposition, I mean, what are the tax revenues that are going to be provided to that local community? All right, thank you.
Thank you. Jim, this question goes to you first this time. Congress is currently considering the SAVE Act, which would require additional documentation by voters to prove their citizenship before voting. Would you support this legislation, and what reforms, if any, are needed to ensure trust in future elections?
This is a very short answer from me. No, I do not support the SAVE Act as currently written. No way. The extensive documentation that would be required would effectively disenfranchise a large group of people. And that's insane to try to do that on this short notice going into the election this fall. The Constitution delegates running elections to the states. And from what I've seen, Indiana does a great job of running fair and transparent elections. They have representatives of both parties at every step along the way, and there's safeguards to check that votes are correct, cast correctly, and counted correctly. I do not think we need this SAVE Act. I think it's a political stunt.
Thank you, Jim. Tim, same question.
We don't need the SAVE Act the way it is, for sure, but I don't think, Jim, that we have fair elections here in Indiana. In fact, I know we don't. We have straight party ticket voting in this state. We're one of 6 or 7 states in this country that have that. It completely takes away the ability of down ballot candidates to run based off of their laurels, not based off of their party. We have a window of 30 days before of which you need to register before the election. You have 30 days. You need to do it outside of 30 days. There are almost half of the states that you can do it on the same day as the election. We have voter suppression in this state, and those are just two examples of them. We need fair elections. And Congress actually can do something about this. We can put in minimal voting standards that all states need to follow, and that includes straight party ticket voting. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, we have a 30-second rebuttal requested by Tim.
Yes.
Hold on, wait for the
You gotta
reset.
go through and-
They need to set the clock. Okay, you're good to go.
I will have to say that I want voting left at the states, not federalized, and I still think Indiana does a good job, even with a few flaws that we might have.
Thank you, Jim. All right, Kyle, do you need me to repeat the question?
No, I'm good. All right, so out of any, and I don't know if Jim, Brad, and Tim have ever worked the polls, but I've worked them 3 times. I was a volunteer. I was a precinct captain many years ago. Our election system here in Indiana is pretty ironclad. Here's the ID. If you don't have it, you can't vote. I've seen them over and over and over reject people if they don't have the ID. It's ironclad. It's solid. And now I can't speak for the other states, but I can speak for Indiana because I've worked the polls. I've looked under the hood. I've seen the numbers. We're pretty solid. But here's what I would say about the SAVE Act. I wouldn't vote for it because of constitutional grounds. Yeah, there might be some improvements in places like Pennsylvania or some of the East Coast states, but in Indiana, we don't need it. It's that simple. We don't need it. I mean, albeit to me, I'm a Democrat talking about states' rights. That's a Republican thing. But it says in the Constitution, Article 1, Section 4, states dictate places and manners of elections, not the federal government. It clearly says it in writing. So no, I don't support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Brad? Do you need me to repeat it? You good? I got it.
So when I first heard about the SAVE Act, I thought, I've seen this movie before, right? We saw it throughout our history. And the last time we saw it and had to fight against it was back in the 60s and 50s and 60s and maybe the early 70s. Because it started with poll taxes, and then it had other restrictions, and then it had people that were coming in as poll watchers from the outside with the intention of intimidating people. And it took years of protest, and people have died to ensure that everybody has the right to vote without restriction and without intimidation. And we've seen so much of that rolled back. It's not just that, here again, we're playing defense, right? So they put the SAVE Act, that's the play that they want to do, and we're going to fight against it. And we should. But when the whistle blows, they will still have gutted and undermined many of the protections that we fought for in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. We have to defend the right to vote for everybody. And this is intentional suppression. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Going back to Tim, first answer to this question. What does a secure and humane immigration system look like to you? And what policies would you prioritize to achieve it?
I've been thinking a lot about what it means to have record number of immigrants come into this country over the last few years, as well as what it means to have ICE and border control on our streets. And for ICE to be constitutional, it does not need to sow terror. It needs to uphold the same standards and laws that other police departments do. We need to remove the masks. We need to make sure that they have warrants before going into properties. They should not be detaining American citizens. And they certainly need restraint and should be held accountable for putting pepper spray in people's faces, jumping on their backs, pulling their own guns from their belt, and shooting them 11 times. That's real. That happened, and we need to address it. But that's what's happening here. We just put $80 billion into ICE enforcement. That money could have gone to border enforcement. It could have gone to asylum reform. It could have gone to judges to make it so that we had a more humane system. Let's make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Kyle, same question.
Sure. So, yeah, I agree with Tim. So ICE is out of control, obviously. They need to behave like a normal law enforcement, department, basically. No mask, signed judicial warrants, body cameras. Got to watch your recruiting standards. Got to have all that, right? It has to happen. They got rid of Christy Noem. I think that's a good first step, but there's a lot of work that has to be done in that organization. It's out of control. No question about it. I think overall with immigration, what you do is you reinstitute E-Verify. We have E-Verify now, but there are so many what I would call loopholes or exceptions in it that it almost garners it toothless. It doesn't really work. And why is E-Verify important? Because E-Verify, it makes sure every legal green card holder, HB1B, has a number. They have to be tracked accordingly. But more importantly, it holds those employers accountable to make sure they're tracked, make sure they're not a threat to national security. But also, they're paying taxes, okay? They're paying taxes. And also, we could potentially look at if those folks have been here a long time, hey, maybe we look at a guest worker program down the road, right, for those folks. But E-Verify is a key, and they've let it expire, unfortunately, for many of the key critical statutes. Thank you.
Brad, same question.
So immigration is a moral wound on this country that has been festering for decades. We have to begin by looking systemically at what the problem is and how we're going to solve it. And the problem is that there is an economic need for workers and for people to come into the United States, and there is not a legal, efficient path for them to come in and do that. The barrier is lower to come in undocumented than come in documented, and we need to fix that. And we need to work across the aisle to help people on the other side view this as an economic problem so that we can get consensus, so that we can build it, so that we can come up with a better solution that respects the people that are coming in and meets our needs. We need to do more. Freddie was killed fighting against a system that was unjust. And we need to hold the people accountable that did that. But that's not enough. It's not enough to say we need to scale ICE back to what it was. Because what we're really talking about is going back to the line of playing defense, that they're going to do something, we're just going to try to hold them where it was. If we go back, if we just get ICE out of the cities and we reduce their funding just a little bit, that takes us back to 3 years ago. And 3 years ago, it was not a just system.
Thank you, Brad. Jim, same question.
Yeah, it sounds like we all have a lot to say on this one. I'll start out by saying we all have an interest in protecting our borders and removing dangerous criminals from our street. That being said, the current operation of ICE is both wrong and shameful. The stories are daily and they are heartbreaking. We've already heard a few of those. And Brad makes the excellent point that we do need these workers. Tomatoes aren't getting picked. Certain factories aren't working, have to shut down because they're afraid they're going to be integrated. We need those people, and we need a legal system, maybe guest workers or something, for them to work here. Finally, I'll speak as a Christian. Jesus told us, I was a stranger and you welcomed me. As a Christian, I think we need a much more compassionate system for dealing with the immigration problem for people who are coming here only so they can live a better life and who have not committed any crimes. Thank you.
Jim. Kyle, you'll start this round, this question. What specific actions, if any, would you support to reduce gun violence while respecting constitutional rights?
Sure. Essentially, I think gun control is a local issue. I really think the issue identification, whether we're having access of guns to children, adults getting guns that don't need guns, or folks getting guns that have domestic violence records or have criminal records. All these type of issues, it really comes down to being a local issue, right? Whatever fits for one school or one district might not work in another district. But I am definitely, a proponent of gun safety where measures apply, but I'm also a proponent of the constitutional carry. I think folks have a right to own a gun if they can get through a background check, of course, and they're not wanted, obviously, and they're not a felon. Sure, you can get a gun in Indiana. I mean, it's settled law. But I'm definitely a proponent of that, but I'm also a proponent of providing mechanisms to schools, churches, to allow for funding to be brought to those institutions that deem a threat necessary. For example, elementary schools that have been threatened to have an individual come there and harm those kids. I'm definitely a proponent of hiring additional security guards to those facilities to make sure that our children are protected, of course. But I kind of point that to our local level, to funnel to the federal level for that. Thank you.
Brad?
So we got the questions ahead of time. I wrote up my answer. I don't like my answer. Okay. I've had about 14 town halls, and I got this question some time ago from a young woman that said she grew up her whole life going to schools, doing shooting drills. What do we do in an active shooter? The reason I don't like my answer is that there is huge division in how we see things in the United States on guns. And that's kind of a strange thing to say because 70 to 80% of us agree with universal background checks and red flag laws and closing gaps. And I'm for those and I will vote for those. And we need to do more. Right now, it's not legal for the federal government to provide funding to study how to reduce the gun problem. And we're having more gun problems. But we can't study it. We can't talk about it. It is completely verboten. I cannot make promises that I cannot keep. I can't promise you here one thing and then go into the general and tell somebody something else and then go back and vote another way. I can vote for universal background checks, red flag laws, and closing the gaps and restoring the ability to fund, to understand.
Jim?
Yes, I'm a supporter of the Second Amendment. I enjoyed hunting with my father and with my grandparents, and I think people are entitled to have firearms in their home to protect themselves and their loved ones. Having said that, I don't see the need for all these militarized weapons. Automatic weapons should certainly continue to be banned, and devices like bump stocks that simulate automatic weapons should also be banned. Furthermore, we need to keep firearms out of the hands of convicted felons and of people with mental problems. And so for those reasons, I support universal background checks at gun shows and reasonable red flag laws. Thank you.
Tim?
We're in New Albany right now, so we should address this. We had a young man died here, handed a gun a couple of years ago to have Harvest. And the day after, so I was there at Harvest working the Democratic booth left a couple hours before the shooting, and then woke up in the morning, learned there was a shooting, came back down here when Harvest was canceled. There were some other Democratic leaders here. We went out, we first spoke to one another, then went out into the streets and spoke to people who were there. And there were so many people coming down mourning and just confused and just, why were they there? They didn't know, but they just needed to talk. And yesterday I was in Cordon knocking on doors, and I saw a memorial to Bryce that's right across the street from the fairgrounds there, fairgrounds. This is real, this is a real thing that we have here. Yes, we need to protect the Second Amendment, it's part of our Constitution, but we do need so much reform, including closing gun show loopholes, including red flag laws, including every law that we can to make it that guns go into the hands of the right people. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. All right, Brad, this one goes to you first. We see other countries responding to the Epstein files, yet our government has been slow to release information and seek prosecutions. How do we hold power accountable?
So the Epstein files have been an emotional response for many people. I've had several people share with me that this has kind of triggered them in their own experiences. And I understand why that's so important. And what they see is justice, not just deferred, but justice denied. We have laws, okay? There's no reason that Congress should have had to act, because the Justice Department should have acted. They should have done their job, but they didn't. And when the federal department is not doing its job the way it needs to, Congress does need to act. They had hearings, they passed a law, and now it's not being followed. Congress has the power to call for contempt of Congress, and actually, if necessary, it hasn't been done in a long time, but detain people that are flouting the laws. Congress has to stand up as a co-equal branch of government, and they need to ensure accountability. No one is above the law, and that's part of the congressman's job, to make sure that we're following through on that promise of equal justice. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim?
Yes, the cover-up of the Trump administration in this area has been blatantly obvious. At the very minimum, the Congress should do the following. First, force the release of all the remaining documents. Second, form a select committee to review the redactions and confirm that they were not done to cover up wrongdoing by people. Third thing, testimony under oath by Donald Trump in front of Congress, just like Bill Clinton was made to do. And the third thing, gather all the information and turn it over to the prosecutors. The victims of Jeffrey Epstein deserve their day in court. They deserve justice.
Thank you, Jim. Tim?
No one is above the law here. And you often hear from people, what if there's a Democrat that's implicated here? Who cares? Right? That is, I don't. It doesn't matter if they're a Democrat or a Republican or an independent. No one is above the law. They all need to be held accountable. And we need to clean out the corruption that we have in this Congress, in this government, regardless. We also need to point to our current Congresswoman and her votes on this.
Yes.
Yes. The original person who blocked the movement to have the Epstein files released was Erin Houch. And she did it because she said she was following the orders of her Republican leader boss. And so about a week later, she changed her mind as there was so much pressure coming down on her. But regardless of who up here is in this election, this will be the issue of this election that will bring differentiation between people who believe in justice and those who don't. Thank you.
Tim? Kyle?
Yeah, so obviously, as a member of Congress, I would support subpoenaing, getting all the information, bringing Donald Trump to testify in front of the court, or in front of the hearing. But I think something I haven't heard yet needs to be done, and the Attorney General is blatantly not doing her job. That's it. She's just not doing it. She's stonewalling. So we have a mechanism in the Constitution that says impeachment. You can impeach Attorney General, you can impeach other cabinet members, and you might actually get enough bipartisan support to actually do it, because there's a lot of people upset about it. That's something that I would do, I would think about doing, but also I would do what Ro Khanna and Mr. Massey have been doing. They've been preaching this issue for a while now, and they finally got it through. And that kudos to both of them for doing that. But I mean, I'm going to go ahead and harken back to what Jim just said about Aaron Houchin. I mean, this is utterly a derelict of leadership, derelict of duty, responsibility. I mean, if you can't stand up for kids, who can you stand up for? You know, it's just, it's an abdication of leadership. It's very upsetting that we have a representative who's not fighting tooth and nail for our kids to make sure that there's clear transparency in everything we can do within our power to make sure justice prevails. Thank you.
Jim, you'll be the first to answer this question. What role should the United States play on the global stage, and how would you strengthen relationships with key allies while addressing rising geopolitical threats?
Okay. First, I think that our global alliance has greatly benefited our country. And they have prevented a major world war for over 80 years. It includes not only the obvious alliance that we think about like NATO, but there's also ANZUS, our agreement with Australia and New Zealand. There's an agreement with Japan. There's an agreement with Korea. All of these have helped keep the peace. They will become more important as China becomes more powerful. I don't think it's appropriate for us to try to threaten or belittle our allies. I think that's exactly the wrong path. If there are problems with the agreements we have, let's negotiate those. That's how you handle things as grown-ups. Overall, I feel that the alliances have been better for us and have helped our country.
Thank you. Tim?
Can you repeat the question?
Certainly. What role should the United States play on the global stage, and how would you strengthen relationships with key allies while addressing rising geopolitical threats?
Let's talk about leadership first. What does leadership look like? Good leadership. It looks like stability. It looks like actually admitting that you have some faults and that you're wrong when you are, so that you can grow. It looks like strength through friendship, and it looks like showing up for your allies. We are not showing up for our allies currently. And we're seeing that in Africa right now. We're seeing that where we have abandoned all of these countries without having diplomats there. Whereas China is kind of moving in and taking over those goodwill. And remember, if you go back to that first 100 days, we got rid of USAID. And we stopped reaching out to countries to help them. We need stability when we approach it. One other thing, we need to think about right here at home if we're going to go to war. If you go to war, I would like to make it so that you must always consider the implications of that war for veterans. What happens when they come home? Where's the funding for homelessness? Where's the funding for reintegration, for education, for drug and alcohol, for mental health? That needs to be part of going to war.
Thank you, Tim. Hold on.
I was on side.
Wrong word.
I knew what I was going to say.
Let Kyle have his moment. Kyle, you're up.
So first and foremost, the United States of America is a global superpower. I think it's incumbent upon the world that they view us as a superpower, but they also view us as a mediator. They expect us to try to help bring parties together and fix issues and mediate, okay? But first step is how do we build relationships? Well, first step is not to call them cowards, okay? And that's what Mr. Trump has been doing to our allies, specifically when it comes to this Iranian war, right? If you want help, you don't call people derogatory things. That's step one. I think we all learned that like in kindergarten or middle school, okay? So obviously, as a congressional rep, I wouldn't do that. Agree to disagree, but you don't call people names, especially if you want help from them. But two, why this is an issue. This is an issue because if you don't have good relationships, you got to buy more bullets, more armaments. And that's a true statement. That came from a general. And that's literally true. We're seeing it now in Iran. No allies, guess what? We're barren, we have to buy all the armaments. We have to do everything. We have to do boots on the ground. We got to do it all. And so that's the issue with not having good friends and allies in the global order. And that's the cost of what we're dealing with right now. All right, thank you.
Okay, Brad. Now.
So the first problem that we have, and we have this periodically in the United States, is there's a movement toward isolationism that we need to pull back. There's a movement to try to blame the outside world. Here's the fact. We are 4% of the world's population. We have 33% of the world's wealth. And a lot of that has to do with the alliances that we've made and the things that our allies have helped us do to build us in as the indispensable force for good in the world. Our alliances benefit us every day. Our alliances help keep us safe. But the policy that we have now in this administration is pure aggression and force. And that works briefly, but in the long run, it's going to leave us alone. And it's going to undercut us economically. I talked with a Navy SEAL, and he said, Brad, I don't mind going to war. That's what I'm trying to do. But I want government policies that make me the last generation that has to go to war. And that's not where we're going. On the current path, we're going to be more insecure in a more unstable and more violent world, and we need our allies.
Thank you. Tim, we'll go back to you for the first step on this question. Tell us about a policy area where you would be willing to compromise with the opposing party and where you would not.
We can't compromise on Social Security. People paid into that program with their hard-earned dollars their entire life. And now that they're retired or about to retire, to not return that money to them is theft. We have to bring it to them. The other thing we promised is Medicare and healthcare, and for those people who are over 65, and to those people who are disabled. And we promised Medicaid to those people who are under the poverty limit. And we promised Medicaid to those people who are pregnant. All of these things are untouchable in my book. They've already been touched, and we need to bring it back to status quo and then some. Where that is, I will not bend on. In terms of bending, I would like everybody in this country to have health care, including the people I just said. In the next 2 years, Donald Trump is in office. And so what I'm going to do is first is work to lower the costs of healthcare to make it more accessible to everybody as we focus on a future where everybody does have healthcare, because healthcare is a human right. It's not a constitutional one, but it should be.
Thank you, Tim. Kyle? Question.
So three things, no negotiating for three things in my mind. Social Security. So currently Social Security is 6.42% of your income, up to $176,000, $176,100, okay? They cap it. If you make over $176,100, they don't have to, whoever makes over that doesn't have to pay any more than 6.42%, okay? So they get a cap. So if I make 500,000, $1 million a year, you're still only paying the 6.42%. The Medicare rate, 1.42% for Medicare, it should be progressive with how much you make. It's currently not the case. It should be progressive. The more you make, the more they take. It's just the way it is, the way the tax system works. And then in terms of some areas to negotiate, work with, I truly believe in national security is one of those areas that I'm willing to look at bipartisan support, because we have to have good national security, have to have good border security. We have to have a good E-Verify system. We have to be careful and to make sure that folks coming in this country are clearly vetted and they don't pose a threat. So that's an area where I work. I have some flexibility, but in terms of an income tax increase on the wealthiest Americans, millions and billionaires, they need, it's long overdue, they need to pay their fair share.
Brad?
We can't compromise on the constitutional division of powers, voting rights, civil liberties. We can't compromise on those policies that are put in place to ensure enforcement and justice. One of the things that people, again, I've been to a whole bunch of town halls, and one of the things that comes up is they talk about they want a more civil tone. And we don't have to be disagreeable when we disagree. But that doesn't also mean that we have to roll over and not stand up and fight for what we believe in. We don't have to call them names and be disrespectful to force change. And we have big problems and we need big changes. And we're not going to get it all at once. And I understand that. But we need to be moving in the direction of progress, not incrementalism. But incrementalism is the beginning. And I get that. And we're going to have to work across the aisle to find common ground where we can. But we can't set aside our values and our priorities doing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Jim?
Yes, there's one key area I would not compromise on, and that's ending the Iran war. It's illegal and it's immoral and it has to stop. On the other hand, there are many areas where I would actively look for compromise and cooperation. In fact, that's a big part of my platform. Common sense problem solving, where we reach across the aisle and we talk about our problems like immigration, securing Social Security and Medicare, helping our veterans, economic development, and a fair farm bill. All of these things need the cooperation of Republicans and Democrats. As a new representative in Congress, I would work hard to meet people, learn about what their concerns are, what things that they are advocating for, and try to find common ground. I think there are many, many cases over my life where I've been able to find win-win solutions. I would try to do it again in the Congress.
Thank you. This concludes the question session of this afternoon's debate. Before the candidates have time for their closing remarks, I would like to say that because I scolded you about applauding, you will have a chance to connect with the candidates. Following this debate, each candidate has been afforded a table in the lobby, and you're welcome to visit with them and follow up on any issues or questions that you would like to ask them about, or tell them where you think they did well, since I wouldn't let you clap for them. We do want to give a special thanks to our sponsors again: Teamsters Local Number 89, Operating Engineers Local Number 181, Vicky Carmichael for mayor, Mayor Jeff Gahan, Stivers Productions, Attorney Lauren Eagle, and the Floyd County Democratic Party. You can clap for them. I do want to say a special thanks to the 9th District Chair for inviting me to moderate this debate. I've tried to behave myself and keep the tone professional, which is not quite usually the livelihood I bring to the podium, so you're welcome. Thank you. At this time, we will begin the closing remarks. Each candidate has 3 minutes. We will go in the reverse order from the way that they gave their opening remarks. We'll start with Jim Graham.
Thank you, Mayor Hodges, and my compliments on your job as a moderator today. We've heard a lot of things today. We've learned a lot about our ideas and our platforms. We spent a lot of time rehashing a lot of common Democratic themes, and I think that's good because this is the first debate, and you deserve to know that we support our general agreed upon Democratic goals, helping people lead good lives, and protecting the most vulnerable and at-risk portion of our society. And I think we all passed that test. For the next 2 debates, I think it's important that we face the elephant in the room. And it's not Donald Trump, and it's not Aaron Houchins. It's the fact that we've lost this race 8 consecutive times, okay? People in the district obviously aren't buying our message. And we need to figure out why and how, within the bounds of our general democratic values, we can revise that message to something that the people will support and will vote for. I think the answer is the economic situation that I pointed to earlier, and being able to tell people, if you vote for us, you will do better economically over the next 2 years than if you follow the Republicans that we've had for the past 15 years. The second thing that I think that we need to talk about is I think you all need to evaluate the personality of the candidates you've heard from today. Which of us can stand toe-to-toe with the Republican opponent and call out the horse manure that she's going to throw at us for what it is? Manure. We're in a street fight for our democracy right now. And unfortunately, in a street fight, the only rule is there are no rules. I wish that wasn't the case. I wish we'd get back to rational debate and about high principles, but that isn't going to happen. We have to meet our opponents where they're going to be. If you want a street fighter this time, if you want somebody that won't back down and take any MAGA crap, then I'm your guy.
Brad, you're fine. You're good.
Don't jump the gun. So we've heard a lot of information today, and I'm not going to recap all of that because I only have limited time. And there's a lot of other issues that we haven't covered. There's going to be a lot of things that are going to cross your congressman's desk that you're going to have to rely on his judgment and his approach. And Jim's right. We're in a street fight. If you're looking for somebody that's going to try to be moderate, I think you've got some choices on the stage, but I'm not one of them. I believe that this tendency to try to soften our message and try to hide our principles is what has gotten us into this mess, and more of it is not going to get us out of this mess. We have to stand up and fight for what we believe in. And we talked earlier about, bipartisanship, right? We have a good message, and we have lost the last 8. And I'm not saying that we need to change our values and change our position and soften. I think we need to frame it differently. We need to help them understand why our values not only matter to us, but matter to them. We need to reach out to the trick is to reach out to the people that are being hurt by this failed set of policies that's been going on for decades, and help them understand that we have better solutions and that we will fight for them. And they're asking for more than sympathy. They're asking for more than outrage. They're asking for leadership. Leadership for universal nonprofit healthcare, single payer. We've been trying for 80 years to come up with a better solution. And all I hear is the Republicans lop this off, and I'm going to pick it up for you, and we're going to glue it back on, and I promise I'm going to glue this back on. And that only leads us back to where we were a year ago. We've made no real progress. We need leadership on the economics so that if you're working 40 hours a week, you can keep a roof over your head and you can feed your family. And more people see that that's not happening, and our policies haven't been giving them the assurance that that's going to happen. And we need to fight for the rights and legal protections so that no one is above the law. I'm Brad Meyer. I'm running for Congress, and I'm asking for your vote. I am not playing defense. I'm going to fight for a better future for all of us. Thank you.
Well, once again, I just want to thank everybody for your time this afternoon, but I do want to piggyback off what Jim said. We need a fighter. My grandmother always used to say, if you lie down with dogs, you're going to get fleas. And I think we're going to have to lie down with the dogs. There's got to be a fight. You have to have a scrapper. There ain't no way around it. There's no more rule book playing nicey nice and we're all going to be gentlemen and be friendly and all that. It's not going to happen. They're going to throw everything at the book at us, and I'm the type of guy who's going to throw everything back. No question about it. I was an iron worker for 3 months before I got on the assembly line at Chrysler, and for 8 years in general. I got a scar on my left arm to prove it. So I clawed everywhere to get where I'm at today. No handouts, no silver spoon. I did everything on my own, myself and the Navy. The Navy gave me an opportunity. I took it and I served well. And now I'm ready to serve the people of the 9th Congressional District. It's that simple. We have got to elect somebody who's electable. Like Jim said, we've been getting beat big time in the last 7, 8 elections here, right? We've got to figure out a way to make it so we will win this time. And I actually truly believe this year we have a chance. The reason why I know that is because I have Republicans coming to me saying, are you going to run? I literally have Republicans, MAGA and regular independents saying, you're going to run. That means if we have the right candidate, the right moderate candidate, not progressive, the right moderate candidate, the blue dog Democrat, we have a chance of winning because they're so upset with Aaron Houchin's lack of leadership on just basic things. You can't get up there and say, hey, we have the Kennedy Center. Oh, don't put Trump Kennedy. Don't put your name Trump in front of it. You can't say that? That's real hard. Don't tear down the east wing of the White House. Probably not a good idea. Let's have transparency. Let's go through a committee. No, we're just going to tear it down. You can't say that's not a good idea. I mean, if that's not an application of leadership, I don't know what is. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. So this election is clearly about electability. We've got to elect a blue dog Democrat who can win. It's that simple. And if we don't do that, we're going to lose. And this election is different than any other. And I know we've probably heard that before. But this one really is. Because Mr. Trump is doing everything he said he was going to do in terms of the authoritarian type of activities, prosecuting enemies and the like. Thank you very much. My name is Kyle Ward. Appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle.
I'd like to give you a story of some hope. Right after last election, when Democrats got swept across this state, it hurt. It felt very bleak. And I visited many of the county party meetings, and each one of them was framed as a time to heal and just be together. And what I saw there is I got together with a group of people and we did a 2-month-long process of what we call in medicine a postmortem. looking at what just happened and say, how can we be different? And from there, put together a plan that we've been executing on. One of them is that you can't get your message out in this district through local media. It's too divided. Bloomington doesn't get the News and Tribune. The Cincinnati area doesn't get Bloomington's news. There's news coming from Indy. So what do you do about it? And we actually made a media company. Said if there's no media for us, let's make one. It's called Project Next. We've had about 8 million views on that over the last year. And what do we do there? We talk about hyper-local issues and connect to people based off of what they care about. Hyper-local issues like super local, like I did something where I put my hand up a horse's mouth and took it out, and it had grass all over it because we were with a large animal vet shaving down its teeth. Now the large animal vet community knows about Tim Peck for Congress. And this last week has been a big deal in Clark County for solar power. And I spent a lot of time understanding it. I went to the local meeting in the government center that had hundreds of people that were angry about it. And what did I do? I learned from before, and what I'm doing is standing up for our progressive values, going in there and saying, I believe that we need clean energy in this country. It is an emergency that we have the environment that we do. But we also need smart policy, and so I talked to them about that smart policy and saying that we should have solar power being shared in urban areas, on highway dividers, on brownfields in urban areas, on the top of libraries and parking lots, and factories and distribution centers, and related to these people in this way. And when I talked about that online, we have now 80,000 views from local people looking at that. That's because we stood up for our progressive values and reached across the aisle, and that's what we'll do to win this election.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
On behalf of the 9th District Democrat Party and the candidates who put themselves out to these questions and debate, as well as those who submitted questions through the online portal, I want to thank you for your attendance today, whether it was virtual or here with us in person. Again, a reminder, you can connect with the candidates at their tables in the lobby. Thank you all for coming, and make sure you stay tuned for the next 2 series of debates.